And apparently we're live with episode 5 of season 2 of RPG Talk with your hosts.
David Miesler-Kuenig.
That's actually his name. Don't let him fool you with his Chang quotes. And Jason Detman, who, we are your perennial guests for RPG Talk.
And we're here with a thrilling new adventure, right, Jason?
Sure.
And is this the first time we've talked about this?
I think it's been mentioned vaguely.
Vaguely.
So not in any real specifics.
So okay. So Jason Detman here has a project that he's been working on that we're going to be discussing today to an unspecified amount of detail. I believe that he intends to play test it and publish it in some format at some point before he dies. I don't... And it sounds like a really interesting idea. So I've been sort of playing devil's advocate as we've been discussing it. So, without further ado, Jason, what is this wonderful project that you're working on?
Well, currently it is called Alpha Colony, and it is a diceless, powered by the apocalypse game about space colonists colonizing an alien world and dealing with the things that involves, and also, coming together as a community. So yeah.
So yeah. So what inspired you to begin this?
What inspired me to begin Alpha Colony?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see. I think what the primary inspiration was that I read I either read a blog post or I talked to someone about 4X games. Are you familiar with 4X games?
No, what are 4X games, Jason?
4X role-playing games are the 4X's are explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. And so they're games about exploring a map, expanding your influence over the various areas of the map, exploiting what you find to gain resources, and then exterminating theoretically the other players. Although whatever. Anyway, so that's a 4X game, and someone
Other players?
Huh?
Exterminating the other players?
Well, yeah. Usually it's a board game or a video game, so it's a they're competitive games.
Okay.
So the impetus for this was whoever I was reading or talking to or whatever said that a 4X game could not be implemented in a role-playing game type situation, and that seemed incorrect to me.
It sounds like you took that as a challenge.
I may have. And also, I've been noodling around with an idea for a colonization game as a role-playing game, so they kind of came together.
Cool. So, Jason.
Yes, David.
Where are you in the research and/or design phase of your game?
Well, in terms of the research phase, I'm in the process of going through some books about American, colonies like Jamestown and that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
Which help inform things a little bit. Sort of like the frontier, dealing with the other, that kind of thing. But surprisingly, there isn't a lot of material to research space colonizing.
Okay.
Most fiction about colonizing space is not actually about colonizing space. It just uses colonizing space as a backdrop for some other kind of story. So, we're going into unknown territory. We're going to see how it goes.
Well, in my mind, it seems like it wouldn't be that far to research, colonialism, the age of exploration, the diaries, and um, stories about those sorts of adventures, across the New World.
Yeah, and I'm doing that to a certain extent, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like to a certain extent some of that just doesn't translate.
Okay.
But I haven't. I'm still. I feel like at the beginning of my researches into that kind of material, so I could be wrong.
Well, cool. So I'm going to bring us back to something you mentioned earlier. And you mentioned two things, that this was in part based on the Apocalypse World engine and that it was diceless. Why did you decide to go that route?
Because initially I wanted to playtest the idea before the mechanics existed, just to see what people would do in a situation where they were on a colony world dealing with things that people on a colony world would deal with. And of course, my instinct as a longtime Amber player was to do it in a diceless fashion. Just, like, hey, everybody make characters, you're on the colony world, this is what's going on, boom, play that out for a while, see what happens, see how that informed the ideas that I had in my head for Alpha Colony. And from there, it just seemed like, why add the dice back in? Use some of the same concepts in the Powered by the Apocalypse games, but in a different way.
Are there any other Apocalypse games that are diceless?
There is a game that I believe is still in playtest and has been for a couple of years. I believe it's called Undying, and that is a game about vampires and immortal monsters.
Have you read that game?
I have glanced through it. I have not read it in a great deal of depth.
Okay.
Yeah, I should probably look at it a little more closely to see.
See if there are any, because there could be things in there that could be very beneficial mechanically.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And you just mentioned that before you even get to the mechanics, you'd like to play through, I believe, like the setting assumptions. Is that correct?
Yeah, some of the. I mean, that's what the initial idea of playing it as a diceless game was meant to do, to sort of bring out like my assumptions about the setting, what other people's assumptions about the setting would be like, what kind of things that they would be interested in doing, what kind of behavior that they would be trying to seek out as player characters, and then see if that could be mapped onto something with different mechanics. But then, it hasn't happened yet.
Okay. So, are you interested in facilitating what sounds like a role-playing playtest session for that?
That is going to happen sometime, ideally soon, but things are kind of crazy busy for me in my day job, so That will probably not happen until the end of May, beginning of June at the earliest.
Okay.
And since I already have some rudimentary ideas about a diceless powered by the apocalypse mechanics and setup, I will probably just go ahead and use those and see how they work out, rather than going with my completely initial concept of going with an Amber diceless-like setup.
Okay. Are you comfortable discussing any of the system mechanics that you have in place right now?
With the understanding that they may completely change, sure.
Yeah, no, I think it would be interesting to our audience to hear kind of the progression of the game from the idea stage through the end product. So what are some of the things, like the playbooks?
Initially the playbooks are the governor of the colony, the doctor, an explorer, engineer, scientist.
Was there a security person?
Yeah, security person. Yes.
Okay. And how did you arrive at these specific playbooks?
They made sense in the context of the setting.
Okay. So you thought about it as you needed people who would kind of be the right structure for a colony.
Right.
As well as people who would be delivering the colonists. Is that part of it, or not?
Delivering the colonists?
Well, they're not from this world, right?
Right.
Okay. So, do you see the people who are on the colony as just being intended colonists, or do you see them as people who are from the transporter or whatever, how they got here?
Well, I think the people there are a mixture of shipboard crew and dedicated colonists who were chosen specifically to colonize the planet. And the way I'm looking at it is no faster than light travel in the basic meta setting, since the intention of the setting is that people are not flying around in space. Actually, all of the action takes place on the planet, and probably that there is some sort of cryo sleep setup, so that you don't run into generation ship issues.
Mm-hmm. And
so,
is this a game where it's one-way trip, intentionally or accidentally?
It is the way it's set up is it's intentionally a one-way trip.
Okay.
I mean, there's not. I'm not thinking of discussing that much.
Okay.
As an issue, the players, characters are on the colony being colonists. They're not concerned about like, hey, let's pull up stakes and go elsewhere.
Sure. So, potentially, for a new colony to flourish, unless you're using a lot of advanced technology, wouldn't you need a fairly large starting population?
Well, looking at research that you handily provided to me as help a few weeks ago, obviously more is always better, but I'm going to stick with my gut original plan of having only 2,500 colonists initially.
Okay.
And that is, interestingly enough, pretty much the lowest possible number you can have and still expect reasonable variation for genetic survival.
Cool.
So that works out fine for me.
Good. And so, one of the other things that caught my attention when you were sharing your idea for this game was that it sounded like the community structure was kind of almost like a player character, or somehow more active in the game. Does that seem right?
Well, the game is intended to be a lot about community, the ways in which people work to better their community or undermine their community, and how the community deals with that. I don't know how. I don't know if it's going to be the community is going to be super active. I mean, it's a Powered by the Apocalypse game. I'm intending to have, like relationship setups with people in the community that players deal with. But in addition, there's going to be a community, essentially a playbook for the community that the players interact with in various ways, and how they interact with it will hopefully through the fiction create ways in which the community reacts to what the players are doing.
Okay. The way you state that, it sounds almost like you don't really need a GM for this game.
I completely disagree with that.
The way you said that, it sounds like the players interact with the playbook as if there are like guidelines or instructions that cause the playbook to respond to things that they do.
I don't. There aren't. Because it's Powered by the Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
There are the way certain moves behave, interact with different attributes of the setting.
Mm-hmm.
So if a character does a specific kind of move, specific like in the one that leaps to mind is if they resort to violence, it increases the tension in the community, and when the tension gets high enough, the community, like the GM does a hard community move that deals with that tension and returns it to a reasonable level. So there is a mechanical interaction going on, but the end result is that it creates something in the fiction that responds to what the players have been doing.
And the GM facilitates that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, is there anything that other people can help you with in terms of getting this to the next stage of development?
At this stage, I think I have gotten about as far as I can get with just ramming my head against the wall trying to come up with moves and things.
Mm-hmm.
So reasonably, the next step is probably just to run a really, really rough playtest session to see how things go, and see what comes up in playtest that needs to be addressed in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, ideally sooner would be better, but real life means that it probably won't happen for at least a month or so.
Sure. No, I think it'll be.
If anybody else out there wants to do a G+ hangout of a really super rough playtest of a diceless Apocalypse hack,
send your thumbs up this way. Definitely.
Yeah, feel free to comment in the on the G++ comments or on YouTube. Although YouTube I pay much less attention to, so just FYI.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. I think it'll be a really good experience to get those early playtests out and see what direction you want to go from there. So, is there anything else you would like to talk about Alpha Colony?
Um, Not really.
Okay.
I mean, there's not much else to talk about unless we want to get into the actual guts of moves and things, which I
No.
think not going to be as interesting.
Right, and those are going to probably change through playtesting as well.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so we can save that for another time. Um, well, let's go ahead and talk about any other gaming stuff that we might have. Have you been running or playing anything?
Actually, I haven't had. I don't think I've run or played an RPG since the last time we talked.
I thought you were prepping for a new Amber game.
I'm doing some really rudimentary prep work, but my Knights Black Agents game has at least 2 or 3 months left on it, so it's probably that's probably not anything that's going to get fleshed out for quite a while.
Okay. So you're basically expecting to continue Knights Black Agents and Diaspora?
Diaspora has finished.
Oh.
Britt thought she was going to get another session out of it, but with finals and things, she's not going to get to it. So in the meantime, one of our players, Alicia, is going to be running a game called Cascade Failure, which is a free PDF on RPG Now, which is about it's a post-apocalyptic setting in the far future, where the galactic economy has collapsed and there's been a big, war and things, and we're all crazy aliens trying to pick up the pieces.
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing from it. I've never heard of that game before. It's awesome.
So, yeah.
Cool.
How about you? I believe you played Saga of the Icelanders recently.
A few weeks ago. Yeah, we played our first session. We made characters, and Evan Torner's the GM for it. Dan Nixon, Jimmy, Shannon, and Val and I are playing it, and we're having fun. It's and granted, I've only played one game of Apocalypse World, one game of Monster Hearts, one game of SCUP, one game of Souls of Steel. So comparing all of those to my one game of Sagas feels more restricted, which I think is good for this. It really forces you to have to find ways to interact with the other characters to get what you want, because it's such a tight-knit community. And there's the really hard yet loose gender roles that we're in. So if you're a woman, there are certain expectations for you, but there are other things that are completely open, and same for the man. So it's really interesting. It's almost like a medieval gender study RPG in some ways. It's been fun. We have basically like a wanderer character who's mysterious. We don't know much about him. We have the playbooks for the woman, for the, I think it's the matriarch, and I'm playing the shield maiden. So we've only got one man PC, and one of the cool moves about women is that basically they can try to talk sense in men, because the men are usually like going off half-cocked about this and that, vengeance, whatever. And the women, one of their moves is like to make them like stop being stupid and listen to reason. I mean, you can totally be lying to them, but it's basically you're convincing them to like do what you want.
Nice.
So it's kind of this very nice manipulation move that's inherent in the gender that is really powerful, because the women, if they're smart about it, can get the men who don't think very clearly to do a lot of the work for them. So it's really been interesting.
That's funny.
The men think that they're in charge, and the women let them so they can get what they want. My character killed this other village outlaw character. Killed him. Took his sword. She was betrothed to an NPC that she didn't love. She went ahead and married him, but they solidified their union in the temple to Odin, and in this game also women, if they lay with a man, they have to make a roll. There's a move for that.
Okay.
So, and I failed my roll, and so something really bad is going to be the result of us having love in Odin's temple. So that's kind of like the cliffhanger moment. I'm curious to see how that turns out. But my betrothed, at the very beginning of the game, he was injured from searching for treasure, which I talked him out of doing. And eventually, he died off screen, but he died from his wound eventually because, we don't have antibiotics or anything like that. One sword slash could mean the end of you.
Right.
So I'm now a widow, and something horrible is happening, and I can't wait for the next session to see what the heck's going on. In this game, there are fronts, like in Apocalypse World, and they're all based on sort of what we want to do or what kind of playbooks we have. So certain playbooks will drive certain fronts, and so I think we got to choose one, and then Evan chose one. So if it's about nature being harsh, then there's a front for that, which are basically represented by the different gods. And so if there's strife, if there's falsehood, you might get Loki, you might get Odin, if there's trickery. So that kind of determines which god is going to be making our lives miserable. So it's going to be great. We're hoping to play the next session in about a week and a half.
Cool.
The only other thing that I'm involved with, thank you, Robin. Special guest Robin, off screen. I'm helping to play test the War of Ashes Fate Accelerated game.
Okay.
That is themed Grimsicle. It is grim and whimsical at the same time. And we were having a hoot. I believe that the game designer is playing in the game with us, and it has just been hilarious. We're going to try playing one more session. The GM and the designer are in Seattle, so we don't start till like 9:30 my time, so I'm a little bit out of it by the time we get going. But we left off the last episode with us using the magic book that we found called How to Make Things to build a wonder of the world. And what that wonder was a story and a half called Rotisserie.
Okay.
To barbecue meat, to cook meat. So that we could share with the world. The world is basically coming to an end. It's getting colder and colder, and there's these different races. And my character's from a race that goes around and just eats everything. We're basically like little savage Muppets. And but my character's sort of the bookish type. He doesn't want to eat everyone. He wants to share knowledge. So he helped them construct a rotisserie.
Okay.
I know. It sounds really, really weird, and it's actually much weirder than what I make it out to be. But it's been a lot of fun, and we're going to wrap that up hopefully next Monday night.
Cool. All right. Well, we're trying to keep the episodes shorter so that they're easier to watch. So I think we'll wrap up there. Is that all right with you?
That sounds perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So thanks for joining us again, and we'll hopefully see you next time.
See you later.